The first thing my roommate ever said to me about my body was that it was more reliable than our radiator. She did not say it as a compliment. She said it as a maintenance report. It was the second week of a cold stretch the local weather guy kept calling unseasonable. I was on the couch with a book I had stopped reading 4 pages earlier, wearing a t-shirt, because I have never in my life needed more than a t-shirt. The front door banged open. Maya Ellison came in, wearing a coat, a scarf, a second scarf, her dark hair half fallen from its clip, and looking personally offended by the cold. "Don't talk to me," she said. I wasn't. "I know. I'm establishing rules for the next 10 minutes. She dropped a grocery bag on the counter, kicked off her boots, and crossed the room in 4 steps. Then she sat down on the couch directly against my side, pulled my arm across her like a seatbelt, and pressed her cheek into my shoulder. I held very still. "You're freezing," I said. "I'm aware. Your hands are actually cold, not figuratively, clinically. Also aware." She slid one of those hands under the hem of my sleeve and put it flat against my ribs. I made a sound I would prefer not to describe. "Sorry," she said, not moving it. "You're not." "I'm not." A pause. "You run hot." "I've been told." "By who?" "Every jacket I've ever owned." She was quiet for a second. I could feel her breathing slow down as the shivering left her shoulders. Outside, the wind hit the window. Then she said, in a tone of pure clinical assessment, "You're warmer than the radiator." "That's not a high bar." "It's the bar we have." She adjusted her head against my shoulder. "The radiator makes a knocking noise and produces 0 degrees. You make no noise and produce heat. You are the better appliance." "I'd like to be more than an appliance." "Don't get ambitious. This is working." That was the beginning, and I did not understand that it was a beginning. I thought it was weather. "My name is Graham Vale. I am 31 years old. I fix commercial dishwashers for a living, and I have a documented history of noticing patterns approximately 6 weeks after they become obvious to everyone else." Maya and I had been roommates for 8 months. We met through a listing website. She needed a place after her lease collapsed. I needed someone to cover half of a 2-bedroom in a building from 1948 with almost no insulation. We were not co-workers. We had no history. We were 2 adults who split a utility bill and had slowly, without discussing it, developed a whole domestic grammar. She cooked badly and often. I cooked rarely and well. She left mugs in unlikely locations. I found them and said nothing, because saying something would have made it a subject, and I preferred it as a fact. She was, and pretending otherwise would make me a liar, extremely appealing. She was always in the process of putting her hair up, or taking it down. A laugh she deployed at full volume without warning. A habit of arguing with television characters as though they could be reasoned with. She worked as a veterinary technician, which meant she came home smelling faintly of antiseptic and telling me stories about a beagle named Constable who had eaten a sock and then acted like the sock had been the aggressor. And she was cold, constantly, structurally. This was not a bit. She wore fingerless gloves indoors. She owned 4 blankets and considered all of them insufficient. She had a thermometer in her bedroom and checked it constantly. Our apartment had a boiler the landlord described as vintage. The radiators worked in a rotation nobody could predict. The one in the living room mostly knocked. So when Maya started sitting closer to me on the couch, it made sense. When she started standing next to me at the stove, it made sense. When she started putting her feet under my leg during television, it made sense. Every incident had a full and complete explanation. That was the problem. That is always the problem. The first time I actually noticed anything, it was a Thursday. She came out of her room at 11 at night, wrapped in a comforter, and stood in my doorway. "My room is 41 degrees, she said. "That's not possible." "My thermometer says 41. "Your thermometer is a liar. You'd have frost on the window." "I have condensation. That's Frost's ambitious younger brother." I put my book down. "Do you want the space heater?" The space heater blew the fuse last week and killed the microwave. The microwave recovered. The microwave has a limp. She adjusted the comforter. "I'm going to sleep on the couch. The living room radiator at least pretends." The couch is terrible. The couch is warm. The couch has a spring that hunts. I'll fight the spring. She slept on the couch. In the morning, I found her there with one arm hanging off the edge and the comforter mostly on the floor, and I put a second blanket over her before work and did not think about it again for 11 hours. That night she was on the couch again, not asleep. waiting. "Sit down," she said, patting the cushion. "I was going to make dinner. Sit down for 6 minutes. I need to raise my core temperature, and then I'll help." "You'll help by watching me chop things and offering commentary." "That's a form of help." I sat down. She turned sideways, tucked her feet under my thigh, and let out a long, satisfied sigh. "You are so unfairly warm," she said. "What is that? Metabolism? I don't know. I've always been like this. In high school, people used to put their hands on the back of my neck in winter. Strangers? Acquaintances. That's a violation. You currently have both feet under my leg. That's different. We have a lease together." 6 minutes became 40. We watched most of a documentary about a man who built a boat wrong on purpose. Her feet stayed where they were. At some point, her shoulder ended up against my arm, and neither of us adjusted. I noticed the whole time. My entire nervous system filed a report. I just had a convincing counterargument. She is cold, you are warm, and this is thermodynamics. The following week, the kitchen happened. I was making a stir-fry because it was the only thing I could produce that Maya described as restaurant adjacent. She came in, opened the fridge, closed it, opened it again, and then abandoned the entire fridge project to come stand behind me. Not beside me, behind me. She put her forehead against my back, between my shoulder blades, and her hands flat on either side of my spine. "Keep cooking," she said. "I can't reach the pan." "You can reach the pan. You have long arms. It's one of your 3 best features." "What are the other 2? 98.9 degrees and a car that starts." I kept cooking. She stayed. Her hands were freezing through my shirt, and then slowly weren't. We had a full conversation about whether the beagle who ate the sock had learned anything. Maya said no. Constable was a repeat offender and would eat another sock the first chance he got. "He's warm," she said when the topic drifted. "Constable, dogs are like 101 degrees. You're not stealing a dog." "I would never steal a dog." A pause. "I would accept a dog that made its own decisions." "You're not accepting a dog. You're warmer anyway." That one sat with me while I plated the food. It was the first time "you're warmer" sounded less like a measurement and more like a preference. I ate my stir-fry and thought about it longer than I should have. So, I solved the problem. That's what I do. Someone tells me a machine isn't working and I go find the part. Apparently I do the same thing with people. I went to the hardware store on Saturday and bought her an electric heating pad. Not a small one. This thing was the size of a bath towel, plush, the color of an unwell salmon with 6 settings. The highest was labeled in all capital letters, "Intense." It cost $42. Maya came home, saw it on the couch, and stopped walking. "What is that?" "It's a heating pad. It's the size of a person. It's for your bed. You put it under the sheet and it heats the whole mattress. Your room will be irrelevant." She walked over and picked up the controller. She looked at the settings. She looked at me. "It says intense. That's the top setting. Why would a blanket need to be intense, Graham? For people who are cold. I'm cold and I find that threatening." She turned it over, read the tag, and pressed the plush side with 2 fingers. The first thing she said was, "Did you buy this because I've been sitting on you?" "I bought it because you were sleeping on a couch with a hostile spring." "That's not what I asked." "I bought it because you were cold." She held the controller a moment longer. Something moved across her face that I read, incorrectly, as embarrassment. "Okay," she said. "Thank you. That was thoughtful, and I hate the color." The color was the only color. It looks like a salmon that gave up. "It has 6 settings. I'm going to use 2 of them." She took it to her room. I heard her plug it in. I heard her get into bed. I felt briefly like a man who had done a competent thing. At 11:40, she came out of her room and sat down next to me on the couch and put her cold feet under my leg. I looked at her. "The pad works," she said. "Then why are you here?" "It works on the mattress. It doesn't work on the air." My face was still cold. "You could put it on your face." "It says intense, Graham. Not on the top setting. I'm not negotiating with that appliance." She pulled the blanket over both of us. "Also, it doesn't talk. You want your heat source to talk. I want my heat source to have opinions about documentaries." She found the remote. "Put on the Boatman." We watched the Boatman. The heating pad stayed in her room, plugged in and mostly unused, for the next 3 weeks. I saw it every time I put laundry on her bed. The car was where it started getting harder to explain. My car is a 2009 sedan with a heater that produces warm air after 11 minutes and not 1 second sooner. We drove together on Sundays because we shopped at the same place and only one of us had a functioning vehicle. That Sunday she got in, buckled, and then took my right hand off the gear shift and put it between both of hers and her lap. I looked down at my own hand like it had defected. "Maya, 11 minutes," she said. "That's the deal with this car. I know the deal. I need that hand. It's an automatic. It's not an automatic. It's mostly an automatic. It has a gear lever, and I use it." She gave the hand back. 2 minutes later, at a red light, she took it again without comment. I let her keep it until we had to move. In the parking lot, she didn't get out right away. "You're not going to say anything about that," she said. "About what?" "About the hand." "What would I say?" She looked at me. It was the first time I can remember her looking at me and waiting. "Something," she said, and I said the worst possible thing. "Your circulation is genuinely bad. You should get that checked." She blinked once. Then she opened the door and got out and said, over the roof of the car, "You are the most frustrating warm object I have ever met," and walked into the store. I sat there for a second. Then I went in and bought the yogurt she liked from the top shelf, where she usually made me reach it. I did not mention that either. Inside the store, in the freezer aisle, she stood behind me and put her hands in my coat pockets. A woman with a cart looked at us. Maya looked back at her with total serenity and said, "He runs hot." The woman nodded like this was normal information and moved on. "You can't just say that to people," I said. "It's true. It's the most defensible thing I've ever said in public." "It sounds like something else. Does it?" "Yes." "Huh," she said, and left her hands in my pockets. Here is what I told myself in the freezer aisle. She had poor circulation, I was warm, and we were comfortable enough with each other for this to be normal. Reading more into it was the fastest way to destroy a living situation I liked more than any I had ever had, because that was the real fear underneath. I had a home, it had her in it. If I misread the situation, I would lose both. So I did the mature thing and started a log. I'm aware of how this sounds. It began as a genuine maintenance document. Our landlord, a man named Pell, who answered his phone approximately 1 time in 9, had told me that if the heat was actually a problem, I should write it down. So I taped a sheet of paper inside the kitchen cabinet and started recording the temperature morning and evening, along with which radiators were participating. Maya found it in 4 days. "What is this?" "Temperature log for Pell." She read it. One eyebrow went up and stayed there. 53 living room, radiator knocking, no heat, she read. 51 radiator silent, no heat. 55 radiator hot, hallway freezing. She looked up. "This is thorough." "It's for the landlord." "Graham, there are 11 days on here." "He said to write it down. He said that to make you go away." Then he underestimated me. She took the pen off the counter and wrote under my last entry. Subject, G 98.9, fully operational, no knocking. Don't write on the log. It's a shared document. It's evidence. It's evidence now. She capped the pen. "Do you want me to record my readings too, for comparison?" "That is not what the log is for." The next morning, there was a new line in her handwriting. Subject M, cold. Bedroom 44, slept badly. Recommend reassignment to subject G. I stood in the kitchen at 6:15 in the morning and read that 4 times. Then I wrote underneath, request denied. Subject G is not a listed amenity. That evening she wrote appealing, and I wrote to whom, and she wrote to you. That was a pun. You missed it. At this stage, I still believed I was participating in a joke about heating. The log ran for weeks. It stopped being about temperature almost immediately. It became a bureaucratic flirtation inside a kitchen cabinet. I would come home from work and find a line like, subject, G, absent, 0, 800 to 1830. Household heat, output down 90%. Unacceptable. And I would write, subject G was earning money. And she would write, subject G should earn money from the couch. The balcony was the first time I nearly said something real. We had a balcony in the technical sense, 4 feet deep, tilted toward the street, with 2 folding chairs and a dead plant Maya insisted was dormant. It was the middle of January, 22 degrees. She went out there anyway because there was a lunar eclipse and she had decided we were the kind of household that observed things. "It's 22 degrees, I said. "I'm dressed for it. You're wearing a bathrobe over a coat. I'm dressed for it in layers." We stood out there. The moon did the slow, unimpressive thing eclipses actually do, which is nothing for a long time, and then slightly something. After 8 minutes, she started shaking. "Go inside," I said. "No." "Maya, I've been waiting for this for a month. I'm not going in because of my extremities." So I stood behind her and put my arms around her over the coat over the bathrobe, and she leaned back into me and made a sound of enormous satisfaction, and we watched the moon get eaten. And then, quietly, without any of the performance she usually put on it, she said, "This is my favorite thing." "The eclipse?" "No, the eclipse is fine. It's a rock in a shadow." She didn't finish the thought. She didn't have to. For one clean second, standing there with my arms around her, I understood exactly what was happening. And then I said, "You should get better gloves." She was quiet for a while. "Yeah," she said. "Maybe." We went in. She said goodnight from her doorway, and it was the first goodnight in 8 months that had an edge on it. The next day the log line was blank. I stared at that blank line longer than I have ever stared at a piece of paper. Movie night was ours. It had started as a coincidence and turned into an institution. Friday, something old, usually on physical media, because Maya distrusted streaming for reasons she could not defend. By February, the seating arrangement had evolved past deniability. It was no longer feet under the leg. It was Maya with her head in my lap and my hand in her hair. That happened once in late January and then became the format. That first time was where my counter-argument finally died. We were 40 minutes into a movie about bank robbers who could not agree on anything. She had been leaning against my side, and then she sat up, looked at the couch, looked at me, and said, "Okay, I'm going to do something, and I need you to not make it a thing." That's an alarming preamble. It's a considerate preamble. She lay down and put her head in my lap and pulled the blanket up to her chin and looked at the television as though nothing had occurred. I held both my hands in the air like a man being arrested. "You can put them down," she said. "Where?" "Anywhere that isn't the ceiling." I put one hand on the arm of the couch. After a few seconds, I put the other in her hair. She closed her eyes. "Okay," she said. "Good, that's good." We missed the rest of the movie, not because anything happened, because I spent 80 minutes aware of nothing except the weight of her head on my leg and the fact that she had stopped shivering 10 minutes in and had not gotten up. At the end, she sat up, pushed her hair back, and said, "Same time next week," and went to bed. I sat on the couch alone for a while with the menu screen looping. Here is what I finally admitted that night, and it took me until roughly 2 in the morning to get there. The apartment was cold. That was real. Maya was cold prone. That was real. Every individual instance had an explanation. But she had a heating pad the size of a bath towel with 6 settings sitting unused on her bed. And she was choosing me. And once I saw it, I couldn't stop seeing it. I went back through it. The car where she took my hand at a red light and then waited for me to say something. The freezer aisle. The balcony where she said, "This is my favorite thing," and I answered with gloves. And the kitchen. She came in when I was chopping, and she came in when I was waiting for water to boil, which is not a moment that requires supervision, and she stood behind me with her forehead between my shoulder blades every single time. So I had a new theory, and the new theory ruined me, because there was a second half to it. Maya Ellison had a very warm roommate and a very cold apartment, and no reason to look elsewhere for either. What if this wasn't about me? What if I was the most convenient warm object in her immediate environment? And the actual variable was the weather, because it was February, and February ends. Spring was going to come, and the boiler was going to become irrelevant, and I was going to find out whether I was a person or a season. At 2 in the morning, I decided I would rather find out early than be dismantled in April, so I pulled back. I'd like to tell you I did it gracefully. I didn't. The following Monday, I started working late. Not fictional late, real late, because I had genuine overtime available at a restaurant supply account and had been turning it down for months. And now suddenly, I was the most available technician in the county. I got home at 9, then at 10, Then at 9:30 with dinner already eaten, which she noticed, because we had eaten dinner together 4 nights a week for 8 months. I sat in the armchair instead of the couch. It has a wooden arm at exactly kidney height. I sat in it for 4 consecutive evenings. I stopped writing in the log, and when she came into the kitchen on Wednesday and stood behind me with her hands out, I stepped sideways and said, "Pasta's about to boil over," and moved to the other burner, and the pasta was not remotely close to boiling over. She stood in the middle of the kitchen with her hands still slightly raised. "Okay," she said. That was all. She got a glass of water she did not drink and went to her room. On Thursday she tried the couch. I was in the armchair. She sat at the end nearest to me with the blanket and watched 20 minutes of something neither of us was following. "Graham." "Yeah." "Is something wrong at work?" "No." "Is something wrong with the apartment?" "No." "Is something wrong with me?" And I said to the television, "No." She let out a breath through her nose. Then she got up and folded the blanket, which she had never once folded in 8 months, and put it on the arm of the couch with a precision that was worse than shouting. Friday she went out. I heard her get ready. I heard the door. I sat in the armchair with the wooden arm in my kidney and felt like the smartest man who had ever destroyed his own life. She came back at 11 and I was still there. She stopped in the doorway, still in her coat, cheeks red from the walk, and looked at me, sitting in that chair with no television on. "You're in the chair with the TV off," she said. I was thinking, in the punishment chair. It's a normal chair. Graham, that chair has assaulted both of us. She didn't take her coat off. She stood there in the middle of the room, and I could see her deciding something, and I remember thinking very clearly, oh no, she's going to be brave about this. "I'm going to say something," she said, "and I need you to let me get all the way through it, because I've been putting it in order for 6 days, and if you interrupt me, I'll get sarcastic and then it won't be true anymore." "Okay, sit there. I'm in a chair. Stay in it." She unbuttoned her coat. Didn't take it off. Just unbuttoned it, like she needed something for her hands. "I have been lying to you," she said, "about the temperature." I opened my mouth. "Don't." I closed it. "I am cold," she said. "That part is true. That has always been true. I have been cold. Since I was 9, my mother used to call me the lizard because I would follow sunlight around the house. That part is real, and I want it on the record. Noted. But somewhere around November, it stopped being the reason." She looked at the ceiling, then at me. "The heating pad works, Graham. It works incredibly well. It's the best gift anyone has given me in 4 years, and I have used it exactly twice, both times when you were not home. My hands went cold, which for me is a genuine medical event." "I turned down the thermostat," she said, "when you're in the shower. Not a lot. 2 degrees, enough that the living room feels like a reason. I'm not finished. You turned down the..." "I said I'm not finished." I shut up. "I don't need help reaching the yogurt," she said. "There's a second shelf of it at eye level on the far end of the aisle. I've known that since the first week." "That's insane." "I know. That's genuinely a lot of premeditation. I'm a veterinary technician, Graham. My entire job is getting a resistant animal to accept treatment without noticing. Am I the animal in that comparison? You are the largest, warmest, most stubborn animal I have ever handled." She took a breath. "And the eclipse wasn't visible from the balcony?" I stared at her. "What?" "Wrong side of the building. I checked before we went out. We were looking at a rock in a shadow behind a water tower, and you didn't say anything because you don't know anything about the sky, and I stood in 22 degrees for 11 minutes because you were behind me. The radiator picked that exact moment to knock twice. Neither of us looked at it. So," she said, and her voice went down, and it was the first time I had ever heard her sound genuinely unsteady. "That's the confession. I've been engineering cold. I've been using a real thing about myself as an excuse to get near you because I was too much of a coward to just say it, and I told myself it was fine because you seemed to like it. I liked it. You liked it," she said. "And then on Monday you started coming home at 10 o'clock and sitting in a chair that hurts you. And I have spent 6 days thinking that I finally pushed a good man past his limit and that I was going to have to move out and start over in April. That's not... So I need you to stop pretending it means nothing." Her chin came up. "That's the actual thing I came in here to say. Whatever the answer is, I can take it. If the answer is no, I'll get a real heater and stop touching you, and we'll be roommates and it'll be awkward for a month and then it won't be. I've survived worse than a no." She was standing there in an unbuttoned coat in a 53-degree living room, and she was shaking. And for the first time in 8 months, I was completely certain it had nothing to do with the temperature. "But I cannot keep doing it with a man who won't say the word," she said. "So say a word, Graham. Any word. Pick one." I got out of the chair. "I thought I was furniture," I said. She blinked. "What?" "That's the word. That's the whole thing. I thought I was a warm object in a cold apartment, and that in April, when the boiler stopped mattering, I would find out I'd been a season." Her face changed. "Graham, I sat in that chair because I decided I'd rather find out in February than get taken apart in the spring. It was a stupid plan. I want that noted too." "It's noted. I bought you a $42 heating pad because I thought fixing the problem was the same thing as being wanted. It's the color of a sad fish. It was the only color." She took one step toward me. "Are you going to keep listing your mistakes, or—" I kissed her. She had cold hands and a cold face, and her nose was freezing against my cheek. She made a small, offended noise at the fact that she'd had to wait, then got both hands around the back of my neck and held on. When we stopped, she kept her forehead against my jaw. 11 weeks, she said. "What?" "That's how long I've been at this. 11 weeks. I want you to sit with that number." "You could have said something." "I said everything except the sentence. I sat on you. I held your hand in a parking lot. I lay in your lap for 2 hours a week. I told a woman in a grocery store that you run hot. I thought that was thermodynamics." She pulled back to look at me, and her eyes were wet, and she was already grinning. "Thermodynamics," she said. It was a defensible theory. It was a coward's theory. It was both. She kissed me again, then said against my mouth, "Take off my coat. I'm boiling." I did. We ended up on the couch with the good blanket and the television off, and I found out several new things about how it feels to be chosen on purpose. Around 1 in the morning, she got up, went into the kitchen, opened the cabinet, and wrote in the log. I read it over her shoulder. Subject M. No longer cold. Cause, not the radiator. You're going to keep the log. Graham, the log is the only honest document in this apartment. It's a maintenance record. It's a maintenance record, she agreed, and handed me the pen. I wrote, Subject G reclassified. Now a listed amenity. She laughed so hard, she had to put her hand on the counter. The next 4 weeks were the best weeks I'd had in years, and they were also when I learned the difference between a woman who touches you because she is cold and a woman who touches you because she has permission. The first thing she did was put the thermostat up. I came out on Saturday and the hallway was 68 degrees. She was standing in front of the little dial in a t-shirt with her arms crossed. "I want to be clear that I no longer require the excuse," she said. "That's a large gesture. It's going to cost us $90, and I need you to be emotionally aware of that." Then she came over and sat on my lap in a 68-degree apartment and put her hands under my shirt anyway and said, "See? Data." We went out. That was the other change, and it was bigger than I expected. For 8 months, our entire relationship had happened inside 800 square feet. Now she wanted the hardware store, the terrible diner on 9th, the laundromat where she sat on the folding table and narrated other people's clothes. We were in the checkout line at the hardware store, buying a door sweep for the gap under the front door, when the guy at the register asked if we were splitting it. "He's my boyfriend," Maya said. "He runs hot. Put it all on him." "That's not what boyfriend means," I said. "It's what it means in this economy." She told her sister on a Tuesday, on speaker, while I was cooking. I heard, "You know the roommate," then a long pause, then, "Yes, that one, the warm one." Her sister said something I couldn't hear. Maya laughed and said, 11 weeks and he thought it was the weather." I put down the knife and stood there feeling extremely known. The heating pad found a new career. She gave it to Constable's owner for a post-surgery crate, which meant a beagle with a criminal record spent 2 weeks lying on my $42 apology. "He loves it," she reported. "On which setting?" 2. We're not putting a beagle on intense. Then, in the second week of March, the boiler died. Not the usual death, the real one. I woke at 4 because the building had gone completely silent. A 1948 building is never silent. I lay there until I understood what the silence meant. By 6, the apartment was 48 degrees and dropping. By 8, Pell had answered his phone, which was itself historic. The boiler was done. The part was coming from a supply house 2 states over. and the earliest anyone would be in the basement was Friday. It was Tuesday. 3 days, Maya said from the doorway. She had a blanket around her shoulders, and her breath was visible, indoors. 3 days. In this, it's supposed to get down to 19 tonight. She absorbed that. Then she said, "My sister has a spare room." And I said, "That's smart." And neither of us moved. "She has central heat," Maya said. "Actual central heat, 72 degrees, a guest bed with a mattress that isn't a roomer. Go. You come too. She has one spare room and a 2-year-old. You could sleep on her couch. I'd be sleeping on her couch in a warm house instead of my own bed in a cold one, and I'd be doing it beside a 2-year-old. Maya stood there in a blanket in a 48-degree kitchen. "Then I'm staying," she said. "Maya, you're the coldest person I've ever met. I'm aware of my file. You followed sunlight around a house. And now I live with the sun, and I'm not going to my sister's." She pulled the blanket tighter. "Here's the thing I want you to hear, because you're going to need it later when you start doing math in that chair again. I could leave right now. 72 degrees, free, 20 minutes away. Every practical thing I have ever pretended to want is at my sister's house. That's my point. That's my point." She stepped forward. "I'm not going. Not because it's warmer here, because it isn't. It's the coldest this apartment has ever been. I'm staying because you're in it. That's the whole reason. There is no other reason. Do you understand what I'm handing you?" I did. I finally, actually did. "You're going to be miserable," I said. "I'm going to be freezing," she said. "And I'm going to be here." We made it a project, because that's what we are. We sealed the bedroom door with a towel. We hung a blanket over the window. We moved the good comforter and both bad ones into my room and built a nest on the bed. Maya came back with 2 thermoses of soup and a bag of hand warmers. That night, it got to 19 outside and 41 inside, which meant her bedroom thermometer had been telling the truth all along, and I owed it an apology. We got into the nest. She was wearing wool socks, sweatpants, a sweatshirt, and a hat. Indoors, in bed. "You look like a person waiting for a bus in Norway," I said. "You're wearing a t-shirt. I'm comfortable. You're a medical curiosity, and I'm going to use you now." She got her back against my chest, my arm across her, and her cold feet between my shins. She shook for about 4 minutes and then stopped. The building stayed silent. "Graham?" "Yeah." "When the heat comes back on Friday," she said, "I'm still going to do this." "I know." "Do you? Because in April, it's going to be 60 degrees outside, and I'm still going to put my hands under your shirt in the kitchen, and I need you to not spend 3 weeks in the punishment chair about it. I've retired the chair. You've moved the chair. I've moved it into the hall, and I'm thinking about the curb." She was quiet a second. "That's the right answer," she said. "The repair did not happen on Friday. Of course it didn't. The part came in wrong. Pell called Friday afternoon to explain at length why this was not his fault. I told him I'd look at it myself if he'd let me into the basement. He said, "Be my guest." So on Saturday, I spent 5 hours in a 1948 basement with a boiler older than my father and got it running at maybe 60%. It wasn't heat exactly, but it was the memory of heat. The radiators started knocking again. I came upstairs filthy at 7 in the evening. Maya was standing in the kitchen in front of the open cabinet with the pen in her hand. 51 degrees, she said. "That's up 9. It's the best I can do until the right part gets here." She looked at me. Grease on my forearms, rust on my knees, hair full of basement. "Come here," she said. "I'm disgusting. You're the man who fixed the building. I'm the man who bought the building 9 degrees. She came to me instead and put her cold hands flat on my chest right over the dirt and said, "For the record, this is the least practical you have ever been, and I have never wanted you more." And then she wrote the line, "I have kept." Subject G, 98.9, still fully operational, still no knocking, not an amenity, chosen. The part came the following Wednesday. I helped the guy install it, mostly by handing him things and being annoying about Torku. By Wednesday night, the apartment was 70 degrees for the first time since November. I came out of the shower and found Maya on the couch in a t-shirt, no blanket, no socks, no hat. The room was warm enough that she had no possible complaint. She patted the cushion next to her. "It's 70 degrees, I said. "I'm aware. It's beautiful. I hate it." I sat down. She swung her legs over mine, put her head on my shoulder and pushed one hand under my sleeve against my ribs, exactly the way she had on the first night when I still believed in weather. "Cold?" I said. "Boiling." "Then what's this?" She smiled without opening her eyes. "Maintenance," she said. "That was 2 years ago. We're in a different apartment now, one with a furnace that works and a thermostat neither of us has to lie to. The log came with us. It's taped inside the kitchen cabinet, and it still gets entries, and none of them have ever been about the temperature again. She still gets cold. She always will. She has a real heater now, and better gloves, and a beagle with a criminal record who sleeps on a heating pad the color of a sad fish. And every night, in a house that is exactly 72 degrees, she still puts her hands under my shirt, which is how I know she was never actually freezing. She was just the only one of us who knew what she wanted, and she was patient enough to wait for the radiator to break.